is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
The war on cops is something that I've talked about a lot on the Hot Zone just because it's just so important to the survival of our country that we uphold the rule of law in our country. And that's one thing that the left really seriously is trying to undermine. So I've got Jared Bradley with me today, and he's from Salt Lake City. He is the guy that does the All Things Crime videocast and podcast, which I highly encourage you to go check out. But I wanted to talk to Jared about, explain what you're seeing in regards to the war on cops. What can people do about it? And let's just have a discussion about that today.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and it's a huge fan. And I'll tell you, so the way I started was I'm the president of M-Vac Systems, and that's a DNA collection system. But what that has done is that has enabled me to travel not only the U.S., but also all over the world, and to train crime labs and police agencies on DNA collection.
So you're hanging out with cops all the time.
All the time.
You do that's kind of a CSI kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a evidence. So anybody that deals with evidence. So mostly the crimes investigators, serologists on the crime lab side.
Just for half a second, give us an idea of what the M-Vac does.
Oh, sure. Imagine a carpet cleaner, a medical grade carpet cleaner. So it sprays a sterile solution down, vacuums up DNA, and then it concentrates it so that even on rough and porous, almost impossible like surfaces, rocks and bricks and degraded DNA, a little girl that's been in a creek for 2 days, they can still get DNA off of, in many cases, off of that evidence.
Wow. So you're talking about we throw off DNA all the time, right? Just in the course of walking around. And so you don't have to have blood, you don't have to have hair, you don't have to anything like that. You can just vacuum up an area where the perpetrator has been and find DNA from that guy.
Well, first of all, if you can see it, like a blood spatter, a semen stain, saliva, something like that, you don't need the M-Vac. So that's when swabbing and the traditional methods come in. But if it's degraded DNA or touch DNA or trace DNA is kind of what they call it now. For example, if I grab your sleeve, we're in a fight and I grab your sleeve, which I don't want to do, by the way. But if we did, then I could vacuum that sleeve and get my DNA.
So even if I'm not bruised or injured or I don't have anything like that, like a CSI, just from the simple act of grabbing my sleeve, you're leaving DNA.
Oh yeah.
That you could recover.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So you hang out with cops all the time. What are you hearing from them about their morale and about the state of policing today?
Well, that's one of the biggest reasons that I came down here, is because my involvement with law enforcement, and especially the congressmen that we are affiliated with, they are extremely focused and concerned about law enforcement and the people that really secure the country. And, I've never seen, in the 10 years that I've been doing this with cops, I've never seen the morale so low. Of the groups that I belong to, there's never been more. It's really hard to explain.
Anger
actually.
And frustration.
Yeah, well, not necessarily on the cop side, but they're just like they can't believe what is happening to them. They're saying, we get up every morning, we strap on the body armor, and we put on the belt, and we go out there to protect and serve the community, and yet some in the community are actually turning on them.
And why do you think that is?
It's hard to say. A lot of it is just, I think these people are just so led astray. They're just so misinformed as to what police are there for.
But we've been talking about the objectives of Marxism, the objectives of these people.
Well, that's the radical few, and I think just like on
January, driving the train.
Absolutely, January 6th, I think there was maybe 1% of the people, and you guys were much more informed of that. I was just watching it on TV, to be honest, but when you really analyze that, they had the masses there that were amped up for different reasons, and then those instigators infiltrated into the crowd and got everybody ramped up, and then said, "Follow me," and the breach was on. But to me, that's like, you have the people that these guys are pros, and there's a reason they're trucking the same people around all over the country to instigate these riots and things like that. And to get back to the law enforcement, once those things are instigated by those people that are infiltrating the groups, like Black Lives Matter, for example, I think those guys were absolutely used. They had, their protests that they wanted, but then those infiltrators got in there and just started riling them up, and then they start attacking the cops. And the biggest problem that I'm seeing is that the politicians are not, and that includes some like chief of police and others, they're not supporting the guys that are on the ground. And
for sure.
Like, you've been in the military. If your chain of command is not supporting you, you're just...
Yeah, we've lost the war before we even go.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. And if the city leaders and law enforcement, police chiefs and things like that are not going to stand behind their guys, then you couldn't expect those guys to continue to do their job, because they know they're just going to get thrown under the bus if they.
Right.
If they do
So I think what we're going to start seeing on a mass scale, not just in the big cities, because you're already seeing that there, and that's why crime is spiking. Like the last thing I saw, the crime in Portland, homicides in Portland was up 800%.
How do you think you're kind of in the business of helping cops solve crimes. How do we solve for the fact that these guys, I've been to many of these protests, they all dress alike, they all cover their faces, they're all wearing black, they're all committing felonies, and then how do you catch people like this? Is there anything that can be done? If the city leaders were to take the handcuffs off, could the cops put a stop to this?
Oh, absolutely. They could shut it down easily.
How would they do it?
Well, just initially you just stop the actual protest, and they have the means to do that. I don't think there's any problem with physically shutting it down. I think it's after that. I was talking to an officer who works down in L.A., and he was saying that he arrested the same guy for basically a petty burglary. He arrested the exact same guy like 8 times in one day.
In one day?
In one day. And that's because it's a revolving door.
Oh, this is San Francisco?
No, it was L.A.
Oh, in L.A.
But,
okay.
the DA in L.A. and the DA in San Francisco are the same cloth. Those guys, I think that they're George Soros type, sponsored. And so their objective is to essentially eliminate any punishment for any crime. And so, obviously they don't give a crap about anybody, any normal citizen like you and I. And so if we get robbed, oh well.
Do you think that they will come back around? Do you think that it almost seems like the strategy is to take away the police, to make it so bad, make crime so bad that people clamor for more government. We need more. We need somebody to put a stop to this, and then bring back in the police, but police under their control.
Right, different police.
Different police.
I think that's the key.
Because we've seen it in the military. I mean, the Obama administration made a very intentional, concerted effort to change the military from a primarily conservative organization institution to a very liberal organization institution by instituting transgender everything. I've got soldiers calling me and saying, we spend more time in sensitivity training and learning about LGBTQ issues than we do training for war. And, women in combat.
And now it's DEI is the big buzzword.
What's that?
Diversity,
equity and inclusion.
Equity and inclusion, yeah.
Right, yeah. So they got to do the DEI training, 5 times a month or so. It's some stupid thing. And
didn't Obama get rid of any general that didn't 100% get in lockstep with him?
Not just general, but any flag officer at all. So anybody colonel or above that didn't toe the line was out. And you could not get promoted under an Obama military unless you were with the program. And unfortunately, when Obama was voted out and Trump came in, all those generals stayed. So the military continued on that trajectory toward wokeism, which, every step that the military or any other institution for that matter takes towards becoming woke, they're taking a step away from readiness, from tactical, technical efficiency and effectiveness. And so we're hamstringing and neutering our military in the name of being woke. But I see the same kind of thing in many police departments today, which is why I don't, like, if I want to go and find out what's happening in a city, I don't even bother going to the police force, because they're usually so hamstrung. They won't talk to you. Even their public affairs people, whose job it is to talk to the media, will not talk to the media. What I have to do is I have to go to the sheriff's office, because the sheriff is an elected position. The sheriff has nobody above him but the people. He's only beholden to the people. And so the sheriff will almost always talk to you and tell you what's really happening.
Well, you got to go to the mid-sized sheriffs, though, because a lot of the sheriffs in the bigger communities, they're as corrupt, and I shouldn't say corrupt, but they're as liberal as like the sheriff, for example, of Tarrant County. It's around Austin, Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Tarrant County is Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that area right there.
Sure. Yeah, that whole metroplex.
Yeah.
Dallas sheriff is as worthless as any sheriff ever got.
So if you go to the mid-sized sheriff's departments,
right, you go to all the satellite cities around Dallas, and those guys will tell you what's really going on.
Yeah.
The sad thing is, not only is our country's readiness failing, not only is our military becoming less effective as a fighting force, and there are a lot of, look, I get a lot of flack for that. I'm a intensely patriotic person, and I'm so patriotic that I have no problem calling a spade when it comes to the military doing things that are stupid. And this is something that is definitely stupid. And I've been in the war zone with American troops and literally had them being more worried about ridiculous social experimentation than about winning the war. So again, the same thing that has been happening for a long time in the military, I think we see happening in the police force now.
Exactly, and it's happening even on the smaller departments. I was talking to an officer who, I think he's been about a 12-year veteran, with the police force. He's done everything from patrol to SWAT, and he said even in his small community, there are activists trying to get rid of any kind of quote quote military equipment. So they have an armored vehicle, and it's exclusively for major breaches, like a drug house or something. And he said it wasn't a year ago that they actually had to hit a crack house with that vehicle, and the immediate fire that they took, he said at least 2, if not 3 of the officers would be dead if they had not had that armored vehicle. And yet they're trying to get rid of flak
body armor.
Body armor, for example.
It's ridiculous.
It's serious.
It's ridiculous.
It's insane, because what that'll do is it will make the police so vulnerable that they'll never be able to commit any kind of an offensive and proactive crime.
No, these are our best and brightest. They will leave. They will just leave.
Oh, they are.
They're already leaving in droves. And nobody wants to live in a place where the police cannot maintain the rule of law.
Once you break down security, just like once you break down the security of the country, then you're exposed to pretty much anybody. So then even a moderate threat can alter the way that you make decisions. And if the citizens are not protected, then they have a couple of options. When the bad guys come, and they always come, then they have a couple options. They can either succumb and give away whatever it is they have, or they have to rise up and fight. Well, if they rise up and fight, that's just when you've already seen it. Whenever there's any kind of actual resistance from the citizens, then they say, "Oh, it's guns." Then they're able to target those pet projects that they have, like take away people's Second Amendment rights.
I've said that for a long time, that the liberals, idea of making you safer is to make everybody more vulnerable. The conservatives' idea of making people safer is to make everybody more powerful. And ask yourself just that question. Do I want to be more vulnerable? Or do I want to be more powerful to affect my own protection and the protection of my family? So that's really what it comes down to. Well, I appreciate the work that you do for our police and making their jobs easier, helping people solve crimes. And so keep up the good work, Jared.
Hey, appreciate it, man.
All right. We'll have you
It's been an honor.
All right. Go check out the All Things Crime podcast. He's got some pretty interesting stuff on there. And share that and like it as well. We'll see you. I'm Chuck Holt.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2021.